everybody. This is Steve Lasky, the Editorial Director for Denver Business Media Group's Security Group. And we are here at the HID booth 8053 at ISC West 2025. And I have the pleasure of being joined by Matthew Lewis, who's the Director of Product Marketing here at HID. Yep. So, one of the things that is kind of front of mind for a lot of enterprise organizations and CSOs is visitor management now. Sure. And the fact that, large organizations, enterprise organizations that have multiple locations, either domestically or globally, you can't really rely on your electronic access control system to do everything for you. So why is a visitor management system so important? And if you don't have one, what are the security and risk gaps you're missing?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and the dynamic nature, the size, relies into some of that. So if you think about an access control system, it is key to security, and it's a required part of that. Now, where we hear a lot, we get this question a lot, well, I've got this, I'm good. What I think is missing from that is you can manage access, but who are you managing access for? Understanding who behind that badge is hypercritical, especially in today's market. As regulations increase the complexity, you change your real estate footprint. All of these things lend themselves to needing something more than just can a badge open a door? And so relying on a trusted identity, being able to assign the proper entitlements to that identity, understand where that identity can go, and then put the credentials associated with all that to then open the door correctly. And tie that back to, well, it's Steve's badge. Steve has access to all these locations. And whether that's an employee or a visitor, either one are hypercritical for today's market.
And a lot of it's evolved out of the COVID crisis when we're shutting down offices and you had open offices or remote offices. So, now CSOs are really making identity management, visitor management a strategic part of their risk and security plan. So when you look at that, what can they do to ensure that they're tracking the proper identities across multiple locations and across their enterprises?
So there's a couple of aspects to that, and you're actually kind of touching on two different. If you think of, we hear it a lot when we're here. We'll help people come talk about employees, or they'll talk about a visitor. And I think the first thing to think is, not all visitors are the same. You've got business partners, you've got contractors, you've got different types of people. But first and foremost is establishing who that is. So the who, I think, is where you should consider all human-related aspects of security. We're not talking about devices and IoT and that, but human-centric security needs to start with identity. So the establishment of who that person is first and foremost, and then everything flows from there. And when you think of the systems that are already in place, you have HR systems, you have IT systems. Those are a great source of at least the core of who an identity is. You can then take and augment with things like doors and floors and the related locations and some of that stuff to allow you to create rules and workflows and understand when someone should get through a door. Again, tying it back to identity, I'm going to keep reiterating that. But not just for an employee, not just for a visitor, anyone coming through the building, you probably need to know that now.
The segue to this question is, the CEOs are looking for ways to expedite their audits, their privacy and compliance requirements. Why does a visitor management and ID system, make that an easier chore?
So, it's important. They're a fact of life at this point. Everyone's going to have some sort of audit that they're going to have to deal with. If you think about what a regulation is, it allows you to create a policy against that regulation. It allows you to create rules and a system, one of the systems like you talked about, that you can use as a mechanism to create artifacts for a report or evidence in one of those audits. By having it in a system, I don't need a room full of file cabinets of every decision or every document that was ever made. In fact, one of our customers had one of those rooms for a long time. Once they implemented this system that allowed them to create rules and workflows and all of these things that help them capture the policies and procedures.
Right.
They didn't need the room anymore. It was all in a system. It's been digitized.
Right.
And they were able to report on it and go from months and weeks down to a couple of days.
That's cost saving, and it's a time
cost
saver.
savings, time savings, allows them to keep operating on a more consistent basis.
So on another point, if you've got your CSO in an enterprise situation too,
Sure.
beyond your employees, you're looking at third-party vendors, you're looking at visitors. Why is this important to have this system in place for them?
So if you think about a lot of regulations, they don't clarify who has to be granted access or who can't be granted access. They just say govern access to a space.
Right.
And so today's work, it's not just employees, it's not just a visitor. And by the way, a visitor is not just one size fits all. Business partner, a vendor, a contractor, long-term, short-term, they may have all different kinds of needs.
Exactly.
And so being able to understand the identity of those individuals, their relationship to the organization, and then track rules and all of those things against that will allow you to have greater granularity over access, demonstrate adherence to any sort of regulations, and ultimately create maybe new experiences, not just, security and compliance and that, but also create experiences that are improvement to your business overall.
As your organization grows, whether it's domestically or globally, your CSO has got to be concerned about how he's going to implement visitor management across the growing landscape.
Sure.
How does that happen?
Yeah, so a visitor management solution, a physical identity management solution, either one of those are going to allow you to grow more easily because you're not married to a single access control system. You're able to create new facilities, onboard new people, create new rules to address new regulations within the system, codify that into the system, and then be able to expand over time as your business is growing without having to implement a new thing.
Excellent. Those are great answers. And again, HID is right there helping people with that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hey, we want to thank Matthew Lewis, Director of Product Marketing for this group. Come see them at the HID booth at ISC. And Matthew, I appreciate your time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Steve.
Nice talking with you.
Yeah, you too.